Yo, what's going on everybody? It's your boy Naruto Explain here, bringing you guys some breaking news today. We have the official promo spoiler for Boruto 2 Blue Vortex Chapter 10. It is here, and as you would expect, half the fandom, it is melted down and has pulled a complete marshal where their brains, they have flatlined over the spoilers because of what it shows us, which is Sarada versus Hidari. It is here at last, and Sarada has some people in their feelings by what's being shown. As always, we'll go over the information released by the official Naruto website, which releases promo spoilers each month 5 to 6 days before the official release. When we get the full spoilers, I'll cover the full spoilers when they drop, and the chapter review will be out on the 20th or the 21st, depending on when the leaks drop, so my editor has time to cook. I know the Sarada scaling in this chapter, it has people melting down, mostly because they don't realize how strong Sarada is at the end of part 1, so I'll leave a detailed and conservative breakdown that goes over how strong Sarada is at the end of Boruto Naruto Next Generations, that covers information you likely overlooked if you're one of the people confused about Sarada's increase in power level. That will be down in the description box. However, after we go over the promo spoilers, I'll give some relative information for the people who are confused to clear up some of that confusion you might have. But again, check the description box for the full 15-minute video on Sarada's strength that my editor made last year. So jumping right in, the promotional spoiler released a fully finished page from the upcoming manga chapter that has Sarada versus Hidari going down, where we see Sarada reacting to Hidari's Chidori, which is coming at her from her blind side as a sneak attack, and Konohamaru is rushing forward to provide backup. Just by looking at the panel closely, there are a few things that we have here in this page that gives us a lot of insight into what's happening before the scene takes place, but you have to look at it very closely to spot what's happening. This isn't the start of the Sarada fight. In fact, the battle appears to have been going on for a bit before this panel takes place. One of the signs we have is that obviously Sarada has her 3-Tomo Sharingan activated, but there are also smoke clouds in the background, which obviously means that they've already engaged in either a taijutsu barrage or Sarada has used some form of fire release jutsu at some point in this fight. But something has happened here where there are already smoke clouds that are coming, and interestingly enough, Hidari's attack pattern is similar to what we've seen before when he fought Boruto. He's attacking from the blind side, and it appears as if he's used the smoke clouds to attack Sarada just based on the direction at which the clouds are billowing and the way that Hidari is positioned. The next thing we can take away from this is that Hidari also has already layered the battlefield with claw marks. There are some in front of Sarada, there are some behind him, and the way that we see Hidari drawn, he's already got one foot out the claw mark and the rest of his body is already quickly coming out to attack because he's using a thrusting motion for the Chidori, which requires high speed. Now, I personally love this battle being here because one of the things I wanted to see with Sasuke versus Code was whether or not the Sharingan's Eye of Insight would be able to counter the claw marks, because as a reminder, the Sharingan Eye of Insight, one of the powers it has is that it allows the user of the Sharingan to use their Kekkei Genkai to see chakra as a color. Code, when he's coming through those markers, still has its own chakra signature, even if he's masking it, so the Sharingan would be able to see it. Similar to how Sasuke's Sharingan could see Jigen when he shrank himself down, in spite of Jigen erasing his chakra signature to avoid Naruto's sensory abilities. The same thing applies here to Hidari, by extension, and the other awakened Shinju, simply because they are using Code's jutsu, since part of their bodies are made up of Code's own chakra, as well as the Tentails and the chakra of those who they consume. Hence, we see Hidari use Chidori and Matsuri use Moegi's Earth Release Jutsu. This is going to be very important context for the lore because it explains quite a bit in terms of the battle setting itself, because while fights in Naruto, for the most part, they follow a very linear scaling where the main thing you have to adjust for are like the counters to jutsu and the chakra natures, unless the power gap is just so massive that it doesn't matter, of course. But if we do see Sarada Sharingan allowed her to track Hidari by seeing the chakras of color, it does explain how the Sasuke versus Code battle happened off screen in the flashback in chapter 5. Now, the other thing of note here is that we've seen it with Code. The travel speed through the claw marks is pretty fast. Even when exiting the claw marks, it doesn't hinder the person's combat speed. So Sarada dodging a point blank range attack that was meant to penetrate her from behind, that is really impressive. However, as we'll touch on later, I don't think anyone should be too shocked by this. While we don't see what happened before or after, we do have those clues that the battle has been going on prior to this, or at the very least, some battle was taking place in the area. This could be something like, say, Class Rep or Konohamaru providing a support role, but what's interesting here is that the narrative is continuing to keep the foot on the gas and have the battles continue to flow out, which I personally think that is the correct choice, especially if we're going to have Himawari and Kurama talking in this chapter. This is a nice balance to keep the story from losing any steam and continue to raise the stakes. With the Sarada thing, I'm not pissed off when it comes to dodging the attack and the Eye of Insight. That's no get out of jail free card like people have been saying over on Twitter, because if you're too slow to dodge the attack, the precognition ability of the Sharingan, it is useless. You will get tagged. I expected this, and I was talking in private to some others literally last night before the spoilers dropped, that the fandom was going to have a collective meltdown when we see Sarada versus Hidari, because there was this absurd notion of people to just look at current Sarada and they say, oh, she's only as strong as her mother was at the part of Shippuden when she fought against Sasori, because people have this notion to directly correlate characters or forms or abilities to a moment in time that is iconic for them, and that severely downplays what we saw from Sarada with their power in part 1. It's one of the reasons why people, when Naruto lost Kurama, get a lot of bad takes of people saying that he's only Pain arc level now because they associate Sage mode with Naruto versus Pain. Or they say that Sasuke was only as strong as EMS Sasuke from the war. There's a reason why Sasuke told Sarada in the anime that Sarada was stronger than he was in Naruto part 1. And that was not because he was trying to make her feel better. It's out of character for Sasuke to fudge something like that when it comes to speaking about someone's power or skill. He is very blunt. He said it because it is true, and the narrative walks us through that. If you paid attention to all the information from the manga to the anime to the novels that are set in the manga timeline, which the description box again will have a detailed but conservative video walking you through Sarada's growth in part 1. It's less that Sarada broke the power scaling and more, I don't think there were people that paid close enough attention when consuming the official content that Boruto is a series drop, which is why there's so much unwarranted outrage when Sasuke made that statement in the anime, and why on the collab I did on Anime Balls Deep's channel for that Sasuke versus Sarada video, it went from the initial script being an absolute wash on Sarada's end to us lowballing Sarada for entertainment purposes. Academy arc Sarada, she was already tuning level. Her and Boruto were consistently being written as being relative to each other in the academy. Relative doesn't mean you're as strong, it doesn't mean that you're stronger than someone, it just means you're in the same tier of power, but there's enough there where you can say that they were close to each other. When Kakashi called Boruto someone who was already at the strength level of a Chunin, you can by extension apply that to Sarada. Kodachi, the former writer of the Boruto manga, writes in the Boruto movie novelization via the narrator, an unbiased third-party source, that Boruto and Sarada each already had the strength level of Jonin, which that story in particular, that was not contradicted by either the anime or manga. The major changes being that Urashiki went from being cut out of the original draft to being added into the anime version, and Karma being introduced at the end of the anime and manga because Karma didn't exist yet because Boruto's manga had not been greenlit when the script for the movie was being written by Kishimoto and the novelization was written by Kodachi with Kishimoto's overseeing it. You can continue to follow Sarada through the events of the story upwards to the point where Boruto was training to use the Karma, which made for monstrous growth, but prior to this, Sarada and base Boruto, base to base, they were still relative to each other. We see a bigger jump of Sarada moving from a Jonin level to being in that Kage level of power when she starts training with her parents. After base Sakura is throwing down with Sarada in Taijutsu, Sakura says Sarada reached her limit and she was going to end the fight now, and proceeds to throw a chakra enhanced punch at Sarada. That Sarada not only matches the force equally, but the collective force of the attack produces enough force that on top of it shocking Sakura at seeing Sarada matching her output, but it creates shockwaves that are enough to crack the ground, send debris flying across the training ground, and it creates a rather decently sized crater around them from the force that's generated, which leads to both Sakura and Sasuke saying that Sarada did enough for them to take even more brutal measures with their training moving forward. While Sakura wasn't using the chakra from her Byakugo seal, that Sakura, even in base, is still significantly stronger than quite a few Naruto characters, even if she's only using a partial amount of her base, but based on the force that was generated, that was not a kid punch that she was throwing at Sarada. But base adult Sakura scaling over your favorite Akatsuki member in power, that's a different conversation for a different video. Again, check the description box for a more detailed but conservative breakdown of how strong Sarada is at the end of part 1 because I refuse to repeat talking points I've already mentioned in another video. Now, as for Sarada jumping up high enough to react to Hidari's attack, a blindsided attack at that, it doesn't mean that she's stronger or as strong as Hidari. We don't have enough based off what we've seen to say that. It just means that she was relative to him and she wasn't off guard because her Sharingan was active and there were signs that there was some fighting going on prior to this. So her guard was up either way. So again, it just means that she's relative. When we left Sarada at the end of part 1, she was already strong enough that she was in that S rank / Kage tier power, so you could drop her in a fight with high Kage level shinobi like Deidara, Sasori, Rasa the 4th Kazekage, Danzo, or Mu, and she's holding her own and she's winning depending on how the fight plays out, because there are other things you have to factor in when it comes to versus matchups. This is important to take note of because Sarada got this far on her own, mostly training with her mother and training with her father a handful of times when he began returning back to the village on a more regular basis after the Momoshiki arc, including the Sharingan training for her to unlock her 3rd Tomo Sharingan right before the Boro fight, which the anime never showed yet because it didn't adapt that story. Up until this point, there was not a serious urgency for training. It's something that was done because it was expected of her, similar to Boruto. Kawaki and Omnipotence, it changed all of that. Boruto on his own, not using karma, grew at a rate where Sasuke's telling him that he's learned every jutsu that Sasuke could have taught him over the span of a year. There was a renewed urgency to get stronger to beat Kawaki in a way where he could win without killing him, which means not only closing the gap with Kawaki, but getting so strong he just overpowers him to a point where he can fight without killing. The same way Obito and Nagato packed up the members of the Akatsuki, where each of them on their own was stronger than a Jinchuriki to the point where they could beat them just short of killing them. That by extension can be applied to Sarada. For the first time in her life, she has the one thing that Uchiha are literally stated multiple times in the Naruto manga to use to increase her power, which is hatred. She's one of the few people who know the truth about Omnipotence, and in particular about Kawaki stealing Boruto's life. So there's no love lost between the two. We see open tension, hostility between them, and that stated goal to become strong to fight Otsutsuki. There wasn't some random faceless boogeyman Otsutsuki on her mind when she was training the last 3 years. It was Kawaki because she was planning to confront Kawaki like we see in chapter 4 of the manga. She's been preparing for that moment. And she, by extension, by watching Kawaki at that house, has a good idea of how strong he is. When you factor in hate and strong emotions making the chakra of the Uchiha even stronger, in particular their yin chakra, it goes back to what Naruto's manga, where it literally tells us and it shows us more than once that this is the case. That applies to Sarada as well here. When you have a character express a goal that they're going to reach a certain level of power, that's a marker they usually hit in the series, and the higher up the main cast you are, the faster you hit that point in the story. That's how we see Sakura go from what was stated to be barely a gaining level power to being strong enough that Chiyo literally tells us in the manga that she underestimated Sakura and that Sakura could have handled herself in the Sasori fight on her own without Chiyo needing to use the puppets at the start to help her dodge the attacks, because that's part of Chiyo's character arc, underestimating the younger generation. But a lot of people tend to skip over that section of the story. It's how in a series that Boruto borrows very heavily from Dragon Ball, where we see Piccolo go from being at the level where he's slightly stronger than second form Frieza to being significantly stronger than 6 Super Saiyan Goku, who fought android number 19, and implied to be relative to a full, healthy, full-powered version of that same Super Saiyan Goku, because there was a goal to get to a power level to be strong enough to fight a Super Saiyan, because the cyborgs, or as the Japanese dub calls them, Jinzo Ningen / artificial humans that Dr. Gero had turned Lapis and Lazuli into, better known as 17 and 18, they were considered to be Super Saiyan killers. We're at that point right now with Sarada, and I don't think anyone should be shocked. She's already had a floor that was higher than the ceiling of the Boruto Kages, who were strong enough that collectively fighting alongside Sasuke, who just opened up a portal to the Otsutsuki dimension, which another video video linked down in the description box will break down how much chakra Sasuke uses and why he was always out of chakra in part 1's anime. They were able to gang up on and almost kill base Kinshiki and pressure base Momoshiki once Naruto at 50% power jumped into that fight. Sarada, Mitsuki, and Boruto, on top of having a higher floor than the ceiling of the Boruto Kages. More than once they were directly stated to have a higher ceiling in terms of their potential than their parents. That'd be Sasuke, Naruto, Hinata, Sakura, Orochimaru. We've seen Boruto pass his parents. Mitsuki has done it with Boruto era Orochimaru, who is stronger than War Orochimaru, a lot stronger than War Orochimaru, and Sarada looks like she's on the cusp of doing that with her father, depending on how the Hidari fight goes, which you can miss me with the whole thing of Hidari being the only Shinju who got weaker than the person whose chakra they were made from, because logically that does not line up with Bug Shinju and Moegi Shinju getting significant increases of their power level over the original. Take that hate boner for Sarada and stick it in the ground and ejaculate into the ground. We've hit a power cliff, similar to the one you'll be seeing in My Hero Academia season 7, depending on how far the anime goes this season, and similar to what you see in Demon Slayer's final arc following this Hashira training arc, and similar to the way that Kaiju number 8 is going, which check out my every number Kaiju explained video to help out my other channel.